Well, not so much a news topic, but more of a follow-up to coverage we did last week, where we looked at the Cyberpunk 2077 VRR update. This was kind of marketed by CD Projekt Red as VRR console mode, and looking at the analysis that I did using our sort of beta VRR capture tools, actually quite interesting. Doesn't really do much for the base PlayStation 5 because it was already sort of running pretty well you're targeted for 60 frames per second in its performance mode. Unlocking the frame rate didn't do much. However, it was very, very good for PlayStation 5 Pro. And you could run the gamut from like a CPU limited 60 FPS or just under, right up to, I actually found one area that went up to like 90 frames per second. Look at the sky, you're at full 120, so it was fully unlocked. But yeah, Xbox, that was the problem. I couldn't actually see any difference, which is, why market a console VRR mode if it only applies to half of the consoles. That was slightly weird. So I did ask CD Projekt Red about this, and I did get a comment. VRR support was added on PS5 in patch 2.3, which is why you're seeing unlocked frame rates there. On Xbox Series X, VRR has always been supported, but the frame rate remains capped. So while VRR is active, you'll only notice its effects during dips below 60 frames per second in performance mode. That said, we're currently looking into the possibility of safely removing the cap on Xbox as well. So I guess the argument there has been, well, you've always had VRR. It's a system level feature, and when the game dips under 60 frames per second, which it can do, to be fair, it seems to be, here's the weird thing about Cyberpunk, it seems to be CPU limited on fast traversal, but the console with the faster CPU, Xbox, actually is less performant than the console with the slower CPU, PlayStation 5. So VRR is actually quite useful on Xbox for that reason, which in turn may suggest that there probably was even less headroom above 60 frames per second for VRR, which may explain one of the reasons why it's not there.
And that certainly makes sense as well when you look at the PS5 base performance profile, right? Where it's just at 60 FPS. So like uncapping it basically doesn't bring much value.
Yeah.
Right. So Xbox Series X would conceivably be very, very similar. So it seems like it's basically just beneficial to Pro.
Yeah, I wasn't really going to be covering this in much depth on the Direct. I was just going to add CDPR's comment to the Eurogamer article I did and maybe tweet it out. But, I was idly doom scrolling on my phone this morning, and I saw a remarkable headline which was saying Cyberpunk 2077 2.3 update is broken on one console. It's not broken.
It's not broken.
The game is perfectly functional. You can still play Cyberpunk 2077 on Xbox consoles. It's just that the VRR mode wasn't implemented in the same way, or at all, actually, if we're being honest about it, on Microsoft consoles. And as we discovered, it doesn't really have a huge amount of impact on the base PlayStation 5. So it probably wouldn't have a huge amount of impact on Xbox as well. But CD Projekt Red is looking to remove the frame rate cap at some point if they can do it safely, which is
I guess the thing is on PS5 you could have always forced VRR, but it would have been that limited like 48 to 60 FPS window only.
Right.
And what they did here with the patch is essentially trigger the 120 hertz mode on PS5 and then allowed it to be uncapped. Whereas on Xbox you can set arbitrarily all those different settings, right?
Yeah.
And just that they have the cap in place.
Yeah, and on PlayStation, you've had the benefit of low frame rate compensation because it's all
exactly by a proper implementation that you wouldn't get by just forcing it normally.
Yeah. Not really much to add beyond that, except that I was kind of worried because we spent a lot of time and effort and money on getting this VRR capture solution working, and then to see that it's not working on Xbox, it was kind of like, well, is it actually the game, or is it the solution that we've been developing? The good news is, I guess, from our perspective, that it was the game being, we were tracking VRR behavior or lack of it exactly as it was meant to be, but it was certainly a bit worrying at the time. Thankfully, you could actually verify it by eye because the 30 FPS mode, it was clearly not unlocked in the same way that the PlayStation version was. But yeah, basically, console VRR actually means PlayStation VRR, really. That's the sort of end point for that. Just a bit of a PS to last week's coverage. Any final comments, Alex?
I guess in the end, if they do take off the cap, it might be beneficial for them to allow it as a user option, because it could be a little awkward, like when you go indoors and all of a sudden it's like way higher frame rate than it is outdoors or something like that. But there's like a future compatibility thing that's a positive, like the next Xbox or the next PlayStation 6, whatever, will maybe run these sections at, above 90 FPS at all times, right? So that'd be amazing.